There is a place in the Nevada desert that is not supposed to exist in any meaningful public conversation. It sits in one of the most restricted airspaces in the United States. It is surrounded by mountains, salt flats, and miles of federally controlled land that you are legally prohibited from entering on foot, by vehicle, or by aircraft. There are no road signs pointing to it. There are no government websites describing it. There are no press releases about what happens inside its fences. And yet, in the past several years, satellite imagery has revealed something that the United States government has never officially acknowledged, never explained, and never commented on. 8 brand new hangars have appeared at a classified airbase in the Nevada desert. Not old hangars, not renovated structures, brand new, large-scale construction. The kind of hangars that are built for aircraft that do not yet officially exist, or aircraft that the public is simply not supposed to know about. No official aircraft have been publicly assigned to this location, no tail numbers, no unit designations, no budget line items that name this facility directly. Just 8 enormous new structures sitting on government land in the middle of the most surveilled and controlled desert on Earth, visible to anyone with a satellite subscription and the patience to look. And that is exactly the problem, because someone is always looking. If you want to follow stories like this one, stories that go beyond the press release and dig into what is actually happening in the most classified corners of American military power, subscribe right now. The research goes deep, and it is worth your time. So let us start at the beginning, because to understand why 8 new hangars in the Nevada desert matter, you need to understand the geography, the history, and the extraordinary machinery of secrecy that has operated in this particular corner of the American West for over 70 years. The Nevada Test and Training Range is the largest contiguous block of restricted airspace in the United States. It covers over 12,000 square miles. To put that in perspective, that is larger than the entire state of Maryland. Within that airspace, the United States Air Force has conducted some of the most sensitive flight testing and weapons development operations in the history of military aviation. It is the sky above the birthplace of stealth technology. It is the airspace where aircraft that would later redefine warfare were first pushed past their design limits by test pilots whose names remained classified for decades. The range surrounds, connects to, and in many ways defines what has become the most famous secret installation in American history, the one officially referred to by the Air Force as the Nevada Test and Training Range Detachment, or more commonly known by the geographic designation used in declassified CIA documents since 2013. You already know the name. Everyone does. But the story being told here is not about what was tested there 50 years ago. It is about what is being built there right now. And the scale of what satellite imagery has revealed in recent years suggests that something significant, something that demands enormous infrastructure, is actively underway. Let us talk about what satellite imagery actually shows, because this is where the story becomes concrete and specific. Commercial satellite companies, led by operators like Maxar Technologies and Planet Labs, have in the past decade revolutionized what ordinary analysts, journalists, researchers, and yes, foreign intelligence services can observe from orbit. These are not grainy Cold War photographs taken by a U-2 at altitude. These are high-resolution, frequently updated images that can resolve objects less than a meter in size from space. And what those images have shown at a particular classified installation on the Nevada Test and Training Range is a pattern of construction that does not match anything the Air Force has publicly described. The hangars in question are large. Their dimensions, estimated by open-source analysts using known reference points visible in the imagery, suggest they are built to accommodate aircraft with significant wingspans. Some analysts have pointed to dimensions consistent with the type of large-scale, low-observable platforms that would be expected in a next-generation strike or reconnaissance program. The construction did not happen all at once. Satellite imagery reviewed by open-source researchers shows that the expansion occurred in phases, suggesting a deliberate, funded, and ongoing program rather than a one-time infrastructure upgrade. Supporting infrastructure has grown alongside the hangars themselves. Apron space, the paved areas where aircraft are positioned and moved, has expanded. Road networks within the facility have been extended, and in some areas appear to have been reconfigured. There are structures consistent with fuel storage expansion. There are what appear to be specialized support buildings of the kind associated with advanced aircraft programs, the kind that require particular handling for materials and systems that do not show up in any public defense budget document. And through all of it, officially, there is silence. No aircraft have been publicly assigned to this location. No wing, No squadron, no test unit has been named as operating from this facility in any document available through normal public channels. That silence is itself a statement, and understanding what that statement means requires understanding how the American black world actually works. The term black world is not informal slang. It is a recognized descriptor within defense and intelligence circles for programs that operate under special access restrictions that go beyond the normal classification system. The United States has a standard classification system that most people are familiar with: confidential, secret, and top secret. But above that layer, there exists a universe of special access programs, known as SAPs, that operate with compartmentalization so strict that even officials with top-secret clearances are not automatically entitled to know what is happening inside them. A senator on the Armed Services Committee may have access to some SAPs and not others. A senior Air Force general may know about certain programs and be completely excluded from knowledge of others. This is deliberate, it is structural, and it is legal. The authority to create and fund these programs exists within the classified annex of the defense budget, a portion of government spending that is never publicly itemized and whose total size is itself classified, though various analysts have estimated it at tens of billions of dollars annually. The facilities where these programs are tested and developed are not shown on standard military maps. They are not listed in the Department of Defense's publicly available base structure report. They are not described in congressional testimony in any meaningful detail. They exist in the paperwork only as budget line items so vague as to be meaningless without context. Things like advanced capability development or classified special programs, or in some cases nothing at all that can be traced through public documents. What is visible from satellite orbit, however, cannot be entirely hidden. The laws of physics do not carry a classification level. Construction requires materials, and materials have to be delivered. Equipment has to be transported. Workers have to travel back and forth. Power has to be generated or transmitted. All of these activities leave traces that are observable from space if you know where to look and what you are looking at. And over the past decade, a community of highly skilled open-source analysts has gotten extraordinarily good at both of those things. The community of people who track developments at classified installations using commercial satellite imagery, public records, aviation data, and careful deductive reasoning is larger and more sophisticated than most people realize. It includes former military officers, trained aerospace engineers, academic researchers, aviation journalists, and a significant number of deeply dedicated private individuals who have spent years developing expertise that rivals, or in some cases, exceeds what was once available only to government analysts. They share their findings in technical forums, in aviation publications that cater to serious enthusiasts, and increasingly in mainstream media outlets that have recognized the quality and rigor of their work. When this community turned its attention to the construction activity visible at the Nevada facility in question, the analysis that emerged was detailed and specific. Multiple independent researchers examining the same satellite imagery arrived at broadly consistent conclusions about the scale, configuration, and probable purpose of the new hangars. The consensus was clear. This was not routine maintenance infrastructure. This was not expanded administrative space. This was the kind of construction associated with the development and operation of advanced aircraft programs that by any reasonable assessment represent a significant investment of resources and a significant advancement in capability. To understand why the scale of this construction is significant, you need to understand what hangar space actually represents in the context of classified aviation programs. Hangars are not just parking spaces for aircraft. They are controlled environments designed to support the full range of maintenance, modification, testing, and preparation activities that advanced aircraft require. For a program involving low observable or stealth aircraft, the requirements are even more demanding. The materials and coatings that give stealth aircraft their signature-reducing properties are sensitive to environmental conditions and require specialized handling and application equipment. The electronic systems aboard advanced aircraft are complex enough to require dedicated maintenance facilities with specific electromagnetic shielding characteristics. The weapons systems integration required for a combat-ready platform demands space, equipment, and specialized personnel working in a controlled and secured environment. When you build 8 new hangars at a classified facility, you are not just adding square footage. You are expanding the operational capacity of an entire program ecosystem. You are creating the physical infrastructure needed to support a fleet of aircraft and the hundreds or potentially thousands of people required to operate, maintain, develop, and test them. The footprint visible in satellite imagery is not the footprint of a small experimental program with 1 or 2 prototype aircraft. It is the footprint of something larger, something that represents a serious and sustained commitment of resources toward a capability that has not been publicly described. Let us now talk about what that capability might be, because this is where the known history of this particular part of the Nevada desert becomes directly relevant to the present. The history of classified aviation programs based in the Nevada desert is a history of transformations in what was militarily possible. When Lockheed's Skunk Works division developed the U-2 reconnaissance aircraft in the 1950s, the testing was conducted at a remote Nevada installation specifically chosen for its isolation, its controlled airspace, and the ability to deny the existence of what was happening there to essentially everyone outside the program. When the A-12 Oxcart, a titanium aircraft capable of sustained flight above Mach 3, was developed in the late 1950s and early 1960s, the same installation served as its test and operational home. Pilots who flew these aircraft for years were unable to tell their families, their neighbors, or anyone outside the program what they actually did for a living. When the F-117 Nighthawk, the world's first operational stealth attack aircraft, was developed in the 1970s and 1980s, it was based and tested in the Nevada desert at a classified location. The aircraft flew operationally for years before its existence was publicly acknowledged. When the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber was developed, the full extent of its capabilities, its software, its radar-absorbent material composition, its weapons integration systems, remained classified long after the aircraft was publicly revealed at a rollout ceremony at Northrop's Palmdale facility in 1988. The pattern is consistent across 7 decades. Major capability advances in American air power have consistently been developed in the Nevada desert, kept secret for years, or in some cases decades, and revealed to the public only when operational necessity, program completion, or deliberate government decision made disclosure appropriate. Given that history, what does it mean when significant new construction appears at one of the classified facilities in that same desert? It means that the pattern is continuing. It means that the United States Air Force, or some combination of government and contractor elements working under Black Program Authority, has determined that a new capability advance, significant enough to justify major infrastructure investment, is worth pursuing in this particular location. And it raises the central question that every serious analyst in the open source community has been wrestling with for the past several years. What aircraft, or family of aircraft, is being developed or operated at this facility? The honest answer is that no one outside the program knows with certainty. That is by design. That is the point. But there are a set of known programs, known requirements, and known technological trajectories that allow for serious, informed analysis of what the construction might represent. The most discussed candidate in open source analysis is some variant of a next-generation platform related to what the Air Force has publicly described as its Next Generation Air Dominance Program, commonly referred to by the acronym NAD. NGAD is the Air Force's effort to develop a 6th-generation fighter aircraft intended to replace the F-22 Raptor as the primary air superiority platform in contested, high-threat environments. The Air Force has openly discussed NGAD as a program in general terms, acknowledging its existence and its broad objectives. What has not been discussed publicly, and what remains deeply classified, is the specific design of the aircraft or aircraft family being developed under that umbrella. The contractors involved at a detailed level, the extent to which prototype or demonstrator aircraft have been built and flown, and the timeline for any operational capability. In 2020, the head of Air Force Acquisition, Dr. Will Roper, made a statement that stunned the open source community. He confirmed that the Air Force had already built and flown a full-scale prototype of a next-generation fighter. The statement was remarkable not just for what it revealed, but for how casually it was delivered, as if the construction and flight testing of an entirely new fighter aircraft was something that could be mentioned in passing at a press conference. Roper described the program as having broken records in terms of the speed of the digital design and testing process. And then he said very little more, because very little more was available to be said in an unclassified setting. That single statement raised the obvious question: where was it being tested? Where was it being flown? The Nevada desert, with its massive restricted airspace, its classified infrastructure, and its 70-year history of exactly this kind of work, is the most obvious answer. And 8 new hangars represent exactly the kind of infrastructure expansion that would accompany the transition from a prototype phase to something more developed, something approaching an operational program. But NIDYED is not the only program that could explain what satellite imagery has revealed. There is another category of aircraft that demands serious consideration, and it is a category that has historically been more secretive, more sensitive, and more significant in terms of its strategic implications than any fighter program, however advanced. That category is unmanned systems. The evolution of unmanned aerial vehicles in American military service over the past 3 decades has been one of the most dramatic and consequential developments in the history of air power. But the unmanned systems that have been publicly described and widely discussed, the Predator, the Reaper, the Global Hawk, represent only what the Air Force and the broader defense establishment have chosen to make visible. The classified unmanned programs that have operated alongside the public ones, that have pushed the boundaries of range, persistence, stealth, autonomy, and capability in ways that have never been openly described, are a different story entirely. It is known, from a combination of contractor disclosures, budget documents, and occasional official acknowledgments, that the United States has operated highly classified unmanned aircraft for surveillance and intelligence collection purposes since at least the early 2000s. What is not publicly known is the full scope of what has been developed since then, the extent to which unmanned combat systems have advanced in capability, or the nature of the autonomous systems that may now be in various stages of development and testing. Large hangars at a classified Nevada facility could accommodate unmanned aircraft with significant wingspans, long endurance capabilities, and sophisticated sensor or weapons payloads. The combination of new hangars, expanded apron space, and supporting infrastructure is exactly what you would expect to see if a major unmanned program was transitioning from development to testing, or from testing to early operational use. There is a third possibility that deserves discussion, and it is perhaps the most consequential of all. That is the possibility that what is being developed at this location is not a single aircraft type, but a family of related systems intended to operate together. The concept of collaborative combat aircraft, sometimes called loyal wingmen, or CCA in Air Force parlance, represents a fundamental rethinking of how air power is organized and employed. Rather than a single crewed aircraft operating alone or in small formations, the emerging concept involves crewed platforms working in concert with multiple autonomous or semi-autonomous unmanned aircraft that can be controlled, directed, or simply deployed to operate within defined parameters. The Air Force has publicly described a CCA program, has identified general contractor teams, and has discussed the general concept in budget documents and testimony. But the classified dimensions of this program, the actual performance characteristics being sought, the degree of autonomy being tested, the integration challenges being worked, and the timeline for operational capability remain entirely outside public view. Infrastructure that can support multiple different platform types, that can accommodate both crewed and uncrewed aircraft, and that has been expanded specifically to handle a larger operational footprint, is exactly the kind of infrastructure that a collaborative combat concept would demand. 8 new hangars, in that context, might represent not 8 copies of the same thing, but the infrastructure for a complex, multi-platform ecosystem in which different types of aircraft work together in ways that have never been seen in operational use. Now let us address something that comes up every time this subject is discussed in serious analytical circles, and that is the question of how something this large can remain secret when commercial satellite imagery is so widely available. It is a fair question, and it deserves a careful answer, because the answer reveals something important about the relationship between secrecy and visibility in the modern era. The construction activity at classified Nevada installations has not been secret from anyone with access to commercial satellite imagery and the knowledge of where to look. It has been visible, it has been analyzed, it has been written about in aviation publications, discussed in defense podcasts, and examined in detail by open-source researchers who publish their findings publicly. The construction is not invisible from orbit. The secrecy operates at a different level. What is secret is not the physical existence of the hangars. What is secret is what is inside them. Satellite imagery can show you that a building exists. It cannot show you what is operating within that building when the doors are closed. It cannot tell you the performance characteristics of the aircraft parked inside. It cannot reveal the software, the sensors, the weapon systems, the propulsion approach, or the operational doctrine being developed in association with those aircraft. It cannot show you the classified test results, the failure modes, the lessons learned, or the timeline for deployment. The physical infrastructure is visible. The program itself remains hidden, and in the modern era of ubiquitous commercial imaging, the United States government has largely accepted this reality. Classified facilities in Nevada are not built underground or camouflaged in ways that would defeat satellite imagery, at least not at the scale of major construction. They are built with the full understanding that the buildings will be visible and with the confidence that the things that matter most, the aircraft themselves, the technology they embody, the operational plans associated with them, will remain protected by layers of compartmentalization, access control, and legal restriction that have nothing to do with whether a satellite can photograph the hangar roof. This represents a sophisticated and in many ways mature approach to managing secrecy in an age when physical concealment is increasingly difficult. The government does not try to hide that it is doing something at these locations. It hides what it is doing. The distinction matters. And it explains why the appearance of 8 new hangars on satellite imagery generates intense interest in the analytical community without generating any official response or disclosure. The buildings are known. The program remains secret. And in the context of American black world aviation, that is exactly how it is supposed to work. There is another dimension to this story that does not get enough attention, and that is what the existence of this kind of construction tells us about the broader strategic competition that American military aviation is now operating within. The United States has maintained air superiority over any potential adversary for decades. But that superiority, which was once so overwhelming as to be essentially unchallenged, is now the subject of serious and sustained military competition. China has invested enormous resources in the development of fifth-generation fighter aircraft, of advanced surface-to-air missile systems, of long-range anti-access and area denial capabilities specifically designed to make it costly and dangerous for American air power to operate in contested environments. Russia has pursued similar capability advances, including the development of advanced air defense systems that have been demonstrated in real operational environments. The strategic problem that American air power faces is not whether it remains the world's most capable military air force. It does. The problem is by how much, and in which specific scenarios, and for how long. The development of sixth-generation fighters, of advanced unmanned combat systems, of collaborative aircraft concepts, is the American response to a world in which fifth-generation stealth alone may not be sufficient to guarantee the kind of overmatch that American military strategy has historically depended upon. 8 new hangars in the Nevada desert in that context are not just a curiosity for aviation enthusiasts. They are a data point in one of the most consequential technological competitions of the 21st century. The investments being made in classified Nevada facilities are investments in the answer to a question that the United States has to get right. What does American air power look like in a world where the most capable potential adversaries have modern air defenses, modern fighters, modern electronic warfare capabilities, and the strategic motivation to challenge American military dominance? The answer to that question is being built, tested, and refined in the Nevada desert right now. And while the specific details of what is happening inside those 8 new hangars remain protected behind layers of classification that will not be penetrated by any amount of satellite imagery analysis, the existence of the construction itself tells a story. The United States Air Force is investing in the next generation of air power capability on a significant scale. It is doing so in the most controlled and defended testing environment available to it. It is doing so with the kind of urgency and commitment that the construction pace and scope suggest. And it is doing so in a way that is deliberate, systematic, and consistent with the historical pattern of how America has responded to technological and strategic challenges in the air domain. Let us now talk about some of the specific analytical details that the open source community has worked through regarding the construction at this location, because the details matter and they deepen the picture considerably. One of the analytical approaches used by open source researchers examining classified base construction is shadow analysis. This involves using the angle and length of shadows cast by structures visible in satellite imagery to calculate the approximate height of those structures. When this technique has been applied to images of the new hangars, the results have suggested structures tall enough to accommodate large aircraft with significant vertical clearance, the kind of clearance you would need for aircraft with tall tail structures, large engine installations, or the kind of sensor and antenna installations associated with advanced electronic systems. Another analytical approach involves examining the supporting infrastructure around the primary structures. Power distribution upgrades near classified facilities are sometimes detectable in satellite imagery through the appearance of new transformer installations, transmission line extensions, or substation expansions. When major new hangars are constructed to house advanced aircraft programs, the power demands associated with the electronics, the climate control systems, the maintenance equipment, and the supporting facilities are substantial. Changes in visible power infrastructure near the construction area can provide indirect evidence of the scale and nature of the program being supported. Fuel storage is another indicator. Advanced aircraft programs consume significant quantities of aviation fuel during testing and operations. The construction or expansion of fuel storage facilities near new hangar space provides indirect evidence of increased operational tempo and potentially of the number and type of aircraft being accommodated. Road network changes are also analytically significant. The routes used to transport components, personnel, and equipment to and from classified facilities leave physical traces that are visible from satellite altitude. Changes in road configuration, the appearance of new access routes, or the upgrading of existing paths can indicate increased traffic levels consistent with a growing program. When all of these analytical threads are combined with the primary observation of the hangar construction itself, the picture that emerges is consistent with a program that is not in an early experimental phase. Programs in early experimental phases, working with one or two prototype aircraft, do not require the kind of infrastructure expansion that satellite imagery has revealed at this location. What is visible is more consistent with a program that has moved past initial proof of concept, past basic flight testing, and into a phase that involves a larger number of airframes, a larger support workforce, and a more developed operational concept. In the history of classified Nevada aviation programs, this transition point, from small experimental operation to larger-scale testing and early operational use, has historically preceded public disclosure by a matter of years. The F-117 was operationally deployed before it was publicly acknowledged. The B-2's full capabilities were not publicly described for years after its existence was revealed. The pattern suggests that what is happening at this particular location may eventually become public knowledge, but on a timeline determined entirely by government decision rather than by what can be inferred from satellite imagery. There is a human story embedded in all of this that is worth taking a moment to appreciate. The thousands of people who work in classified programs of this kind, the engineers, the test pilots, the maintenance technicians, the logistics specialists, the security personnel, and the many others whose skills and labor make advanced military aviation possible, live and work under conditions of secrecy that impose real personal costs. They cannot discuss their work with family members. They cannot describe what they do to friends. They cannot take pride in their professional accomplishments in any public way. Former participants in classified programs have described the experience in terms that capture both the privilege and the burden of that kind of service. The knowledge that you are working on something that genuinely matters, that the technology you are helping develop may one day protect the lives of American service members or preserve the kind of military advantage that deters conflict before it begins. That sense of purpose is real, and it is meaningful. But it coexists with the isolation that comes from living a professional life that cannot be shared in any normal way. Many of the people who work in the black world carry the details of their work to their deaths without ever being able to speak freely about what they accomplished. That is a genuine sacrifice, and it deserves recognition, even in a context where the specifics of what they did remain classified indefinitely. The test pilots who fly aircraft at classified Nevada facilities occupy a particularly extraordinary position within this world. Flying an aircraft that does not officially exist, pushing it to performance limits that have never been established, doing so in an environment where any incident must be managed with extraordinary care to avoid compromising the program, requires a particular combination of skill, discipline, and commitment that goes well beyond what is required of even the most exceptional operational pilots. The history of test pilot fatalities at classified Nevada facilities includes names that were not publicly connected to their work for years after their deaths, individuals whose families were told only that they had died in an accident, without any of the specific context that would normally accompany a military aviation fatality. That history is a reminder that the construction visible in satellite imagery represents not just hardware and infrastructure, but a community of human beings who have chosen to do some of the most demanding and consequential work available to anyone in the American military and defense establishment. Let us now consider the timeline question directly. When might we expect to know more about what is happening at this location? The history of classified aviation programs offers some guidance, though the pattern is not perfectly consistent. In general, Programs that have reached the stage of significant infrastructure development, the stage that satellite imagery suggests this program may have reached, have historically moved towards some form of public acknowledgement within a window of roughly 5 to 15 years from that point, though the range is wide. The F-117 program spent years in classified operation before its existence was publicly confirmed. The B-2 was revealed relatively early in its development compared to some other programs. The existence of hypersonic programs, which have received substantial public attention in recent years, was acknowledged well before the details of specific vehicles became clear. The factors that determine when disclosure occurs include the strategic benefit of maintaining secrecy versus the benefit of deterrent effect that comes from demonstrating a new capability publicly, the degree to which foreign intelligence services are believed to have already obtained knowledge of the program through their own collection means, the point in the acquisition process at which the program requires the kind of congressional and public budget discussion that necessitates more openness, and decisions made at the highest levels of government about what serves American national security interests at a given moment. None of those factors can be easily predicted from outside the government. What can be said with confidence is that the construction activity, visible at this Nevada location, suggests a program that has reached a level of development that will eventually demand some form of public acknowledgement, if only because operational employment of whatever capability is being developed will eventually make concealment impossible. There is also a budget dimension to this story that deserves attention, even though the specifics are, by definition, not publicly available. The United States defense budget contains a classified portion, sometimes referred to as the black budget, whose total size is itself classified. Various estimates from researchers who have attempted to reconstruct the total from public clues have suggested figures in the range of $50 to $80 billion annually, though these estimates carry significant uncertainty. Within that classified budget, specific program line items are so vaguely described in any publicly available documentation that they cannot be identified without access to the classified annexes that detail what specific items actually fund. The infrastructure visible at a classified Nevada location does not appear in any line item that can be identified in public budget documents. This is not because the construction was not funded. It clearly was funded, and at a scale that suggests a budget commitment substantial enough to justify serious strategic attention. It is because the funding flows through channels specifically designed to prevent identification through the kind of budget analysis that congressional staff, academic researchers, and advocacy organizations routinely apply to defense spending. The existence of the construction is visible from orbit. The budget that funded it is invisible in any public document. That asymmetry is itself a remarkable feature of the modern American defense establishment, one that raises genuine questions about accountability and oversight that are worth examining separately from the purely technical question of what is being built. Congressional oversight of classified programs is a subject that generates significant debate in policy circles. By law, the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees of both chambers of Congress are supposed to receive classified briefings on major special access programs. Senior members of these committees, particularly the chairs and ranking members, have access to information about classified programs that is not available to other legislators or to the public. Whether that oversight is sufficiently robust, whether the briefings provided are complete and accurate, and whether committee members have the technical expertise and the staff support needed to effectively evaluate what they are being told about highly complex technical programs. These are questions that former officials, oversight experts, and policy analysts have raised consistently over the years. The existence of major infrastructure development at a classified Nevada location, visible to anyone with a satellite subscription while remaining officially unacknowledged, is an example of the kind of situation where the gap between what can be observed and what can be officially discussed creates real challenges for anyone trying to assess whether oversight mechanisms are functioning as intended. None of this is to suggest that the programs being developed at classified Nevada facilities are improper or unjustified. The history of American black world aviation strongly suggests the opposite. The technologies developed in Nevada's classified corridors over the past 70 years have consistently produced capabilities that proved strategically decisive and in some cases prevented conflicts from occurring by making the costs of adversarial action prohibitively high. The investment in classified capability has by most serious assessments been justified by its results. The question raised by the visibility of major new construction is not whether classified programs should exist. They clearly should, and they clearly will. The question is whether the oversight structures designed to ensure that those programs serve national interests and are managed responsibly are functioning with the rigor that programs of this scale and consequence demand. Let us return to the hangars themselves and think carefully about what their specific configuration suggests. Open-source analysts examining satellite imagery of the Nevada construction have noted several features that have informed their assessments. The hangars are positioned in a configuration that suggests operational rather than purely developmental use. Purely developmental programs, working with one or two prototype aircraft in an experimental phase, typically do not require multiple large hangars arranged in the kind of pattern that satellite imagery suggests. The arrangement is more consistent with a facility designed to support multiple airframes operating in a coordinated program, potentially with different hangars serving different functional purposes, some dedicated to maintenance and modification, some to mission preparation, some to specific systems work. The size of the apron areas adjacent to the hangars suggests that aircraft would be moved between the hangar complex and runway access routes on a regular basis, consistent with an active flying operation rather than static storage or limited experimental testing. The construction timeline, which based on satellite imagery analysis appears to span several years with additions being made in phases rather than all at once, is consistent with a program that has been growing as it matures, adding infrastructure as the scope of operations expands and as the program transitions through different development phases. All of these details point toward the same broad conclusion. Whatever is being developed and operated at this location, it is past the earliest stages of development. It is a program of significant scale and investment. It is associated with aircraft, or a family of aircraft, that represent a meaningful advance over what is currently acknowledged to exist in the American inventory. And it is being conducted with a level of operational seriousness that justifies the kind of permanent, large-scale infrastructure investment that satellite imagery has revealed. The specific details of what that program actually involves remain as classified as anything in the American defense establishment. The physical evidence of its existence and scale, however, is visible to anyone willing to look. There is one more dimension of this story that has not yet been fully addressed, and it is perhaps the most speculative, but also the most consequential dimension of all. That is the question of what the existence of this program tells us about the future of warfare itself. The most significant military aircraft programs of the past century were not just engineering achievements, they were strategic revelations. The B-2 stealth bomber did not just add a new aircraft to the American inventory. It changed the calculation that any adversary had to make about the ability of its air defenses to detect and defeat incoming threats. The U-2 and SR-71 did not just provide reconnaissance capability. They changed the nature of strategic intelligence collection and forced adversaries to accept that their most sensitive activities were potentially visible to American eyes. The F-22 did not just create a new fighter. It established an air superiority benchmark that no adversary has yet been able to credibly challenge. If what is being developed in Nevada represents a comparable step, whether in stealth, in range, in autonomy, in sensor capability, in the integration of crewed and uncrewed systems, in the use of artificial intelligence for decision support in contested airspace, or in some combination of these factors, then its strategic implications go well beyond the technical details of the aircraft itself. It represents a potential redefinition of what air power can do and what an adversary must contend with. The history of these programs suggests that the impact of the capability, when it eventually becomes known, will be larger than what even well-informed outside observers are currently anticipating. That has been true of essentially every major classified aviation program in American history. The gap between what was assumed to be possible and what was actually achieved in the Nevada desert has consistently surprised even sophisticated observers. There is every reason to believe that the program reflected in the construction visible at this location will follow the same pattern. 8 hangars that no official aircraft are assigned to, no unit designation, no budget line that can be traced, no press release, no acknowledgement, just concrete and steel in the Nevada desert, visible from orbit, housing something that the most powerful air force in the history of humanity has decided is worth protecting with every layer of secrecy available to it. That alone tells you something important. The things that get protected with the greatest intensity of classification are, historically, the things that matter the most. And in the hierarchy of things that matter to a nation that has built its strategic position on technological superiority, in the air domain, whatever is sitting inside those hangars in Nevada sits very close to the top. The men and women who built those hangars, who designed the aircraft that occupy them, who fly them in the restricted airspace over the Nevada desert at hours and altitudes that ensure they are never visible to civilian observers, who maintain them, who analyze the data they collect, who work every day to push a classified program from its current state toward whatever operational capability it is designed to achieve. They are doing work that will almost certainly matter enormously to the future of American security, even if their names, their contributions, and the specifics of what they accomplished remain classified for years or decades to come. The hangars visible in satellite imagery are their monument, built not for public recognition, but for a purpose that their nation has determined is worth the investment of national treasure, national talent, and the extraordinary discipline of sustained secrecy. The Nevada desert keeps its secrets better than almost anywhere else on Earth. The geography helps, the restricted airspace helps, the security infrastructure helps. But most of all, the people who work in these programs keep the secrets, out of professional obligation, out of loyalty, out of genuine belief that what they are doing matters. And based on everything that the history of classified Nevada aviation tells us, that belief is well-founded. What is being built in those 8 hangars, whatever it turns out to be, will eventually emerge from the black world into at least partial public awareness. When it does, the reaction will likely mirror every previous disclosure of a major classified aviation program. There will be surprise at what was achieved. There will be recognition of the scale of investment that was involved. There will be appreciation, or at least acknowledgement, of the gap between what was publicly assumed about American air power and what had actually been developed in secret. And there will be a new baseline for what is possible, established once again in the same Nevada desert that has been establishing those baselines for 70 years. Until that moment of disclosure arrives, what satellite imagery shows will continue to be the best available window into a program that the United States government has chosen to protect at the highest available level of classification. 8 hangars, no official aircraft, expanded apron space, new supporting infrastructure. A pattern of construction consistent with a major and maturing classified aviation program. The Nevada desert does not give up its secrets easily, but it cannot hide the fact that it is keeping them. And in the history of American air power, that has always been enough to know that something extraordinary is underway. The details will come eventually. They always do. And when they do, they will remind us once again that the most important developments in the most consequential technology competition of our era have been happening not in public view, but in the classified corners of a desert that the United States has been using to build the future of air power since before most people alive today were born. The hangars are there. The program is real. The rest remains to be seen. If this story made you think differently about what is happening in the world of classified military aviation, hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. The stories that matter most are the ones that are hardest to tell. This is one of them.